What? This thing? This isn't a real halo. It's the Bright Tangerine Halo. And if you're wondering why I've got it suspended over my head like I'm about to be inducted into the Saintly Hall of Fame, it's because that's roughly how it felt when I actually started using it on a real job. Not in a spiritual sense, obviously, more in that very practical way where a piece of kit arrives and you hope it's going to be a bit useful. But what actually happens is it sort of fixes a whole bunch of small, irritating problems that you just kind of taught yourself to live with. Because here's the truth, compact cameras are now so good at the image part that we'd almost forgotten that the physical part is still the bottleneck. And the physical part is what decides whether your day feels calm and in control, or whether you spend 12 hours doing endless negotiations with your rig. I'm going to take the visual joke down now because I keep banging my head on it. The Halo, for me, is the first time in a while I put something on a small camera and thought, right, that's it. This is the foundation, because it gives you real estate, a proper mounting points, and a real rigid structure that you can rig to rather than questing after the perfect non-existent cage. So today I want to show you what it is, how I've actually been using it out on a fishing campaign through January, why it's been the most surprising bit of the Bright Tangerine kit I've had my hands on, and how it's changed the way I operate small cameras, both in terms of stability and in terms of enjoying the process a bit more. A note on transparency before we get into it, Bright Tangerine have loaned me a whole bunch of kit for this project, and the Halo is part of that loan. I'm not getting paid, and nobody has any say over what I'm about to tell you. I'm just telling you what it's like to actually use. Something that's changed in the last few years is that small camera bodies have basically become good enough for nearly everything most of us are doing, certainly in the commercial space and brand world, and probably even in documentary context, because the picture is just there now. The dynamic range is there, the sensitivity is there, the codecs are decent, lenses are great, autofocus has become usable when you need it, and whole camera packages are now light enough that you can carry it all day without feeling like your neck is being punished for your career choices. But the moment you step into real work, as in you're not just filming something for the joy of it, but you're actually building a deliverable for a client, you begin to add all the peripheral stuff that turns a camera into a camera you can operate for hours. And that's where compact bodies often fall apart as physical platforms. So when a company says that they built something to solve rigging issues for smaller cameras, colour me interested. Not because I love buying kit, although there's an argument to be made that I do, but I like kit that's good and days that work well for me. The Halo is essentially a universal cage, but it's a very particular kind of cage, and this is the key idea, because it doesn't treat the camera body as the structure that you're rigging off. It treats the camera body as the thing that you're protecting and a thing you're building around. And that sort of sounds a bit like semantics until you've actually lived the alternative, because most camera-specific cages cling to the camera contour, they depend on it, they wrap it, and the moment the next camera comes out with a slightly different shape, you have to buy a new cage, and you've also got the basic issue that you're trying to attach an ecosystem to a small object that was never really designed to be a scaffold platform. The Halo completely flips that. The Halo becomes the scaffold, which means you rig the Halo, not the camera. And that gives you loads of sensible mounting points in really sensible places. It gives you surface area, and it gives you this feeling that the camera is now living inside something that's designed for abuse, rather than being the abused thing itself. So practically, it gives you industry standard threads, NATO on all sides, cold shoes, QD points, the kind of really essential infrastructure that lets you build a rig where things live exactly where they should live. And then the camera sits inside it without being the thing that takes all the stress. And if you've ever found yourself trying to attach something to a camera body and realizing the only place you can put that thing is somewhere that makes the camera worse to hold, you'll already understand why this matters. Now, the reason I was actually in a position to test this properly is because I've been working on a fishing campaign across January, which is one of those jobs where you have a clear outcome you're aiming for, yet the filming itself is very changeable. Because you're working around skippers and boats and tides and weather and whatever type of fishing happens to be happening. And you can't really force the sea to match your production schedule. So you just block out a period, keep yourself available, and then do the best you can within that window. And the thing I quite enjoy about that way of working is that it forces you into a documentary mindset, even if the deliverable is ultimately a brand film, because you're constantly adapting, constantly making real decisions based on what's in front of you. And when you're doing that, you very quickly learn what parts of your kit are actually robust systems and what parts are just basically that, parts. One of my aims was to capture some behind the scenes footage where possible, not because BTS is mandatory on the brief, but because it really adds texture and credibility, and for me it's really useful for socials, and it's useful for telling the story of the work without having to narrate everything. But of course, on small inshore boats, you don't have the luxury of bringing an assistant or a second camera operator, because there's barely enough room for one camera holding person to move safely, let alone two. So the only way to capture BTS is to mount a camera. And mounting on boats is never neat, because you don't know what surfaces you'll have, you don't know what angles you'll have, and no matter how many deadliest catch behind the scenes snippets you're able to find, you still don't know where you're going to be able to clamp things and how much spray you're going to deal with, vibration, movement, time pressure. So the absolute last thing you want to do is to spend 10 minutes inventing a rigging solution when the moment is already fleeting. And this is where the Halo started paying for itself immediately. When I say paying, I've been loaned it, but you know what I mean. Because instead of trying to find somewhere on the camera body to attach an ecosystem, I had a rigid structure around it the whole time with multiple reliable points. So I could mount things quickly and safely, and I could respond to whatever the boat gave me that day, which is really what you want from any tool in that environment. The BTS camera mounting benefit is pretty obvious. The more interesting benefit, and the one that I didn't really anticipate, is what it does to the feel of a small camera when you actually pick it up. I built a compact handheld configuration using the Halo and the Create baseplate, and I tested that with the Nikon ZR and with the Sony ZV-E1. And the setup is not complicated at all. It's just the Halo around the camera, the Create baseplate underneath, Casbar side handles, and also sometimes a top handle, and then I've got space to add a mic or wireless transmitter receiver really cleanly. And what happened was, the camera stopped feeling like a small, slippery, small, fragile rectangle that you're trying to hold as politely as possible, and it starts feeling like a compact operating tool because you've got proper points of contact. And the top handle is higher, which gives you better leverage for keeping the horizon stable, and the side handles give you really robust grip and control. And then, interestingly, the Create baseplate, protruding behind the camera on a small body, becomes useful in and of itself, because you can pull it into your chest as a third point of contact, which gives you a really well anchored, yet still handheld feel, where the camera movement is still human, but much less accidental. It's hard to overstate how much that changes your confidence when you're operating in conditions where you don't get to have infinite takes. Because when the rig feels stable and secure, you're not thinking about it at all. What you're thinking about is the shot. You're thinking about timing, you're thinking about where you want to land, and you're more willing to move because you trust the rig will do exactly what you want it to do. And that cemented in my mind that the Halo isn't just a clever idea, it's a genuinely brilliant piece of working equipment. The other reason that it's been interesting is it's part of this broader Create ecosystem from Bright Tangerine. And I know people, and myself included, say ecosystem a lot, but here it's actually true in a very practical sense, because you're not buying a single fixed object that only has the one configuration. You're buying parts that can be rearranged to match the day, and that matters because jobs can really change shape, often multiple times within the same week. Some days you want minimal handheld, some days you want rods, some days you want to go from tripod to handheld quickly, some days you're running a full fizz system, some days you want just the most stable operating posture, some days you want to mount extra things because you're capturing BTS or you're running a more documentary type setup. This kind of modular system makes those transitions so much less painful, and more importantly, it reduces the amount of compromises you have to accept because you've got a clean, consistent foundation. And something else happens when you use really well-made hard parts, which is that you use them more. Not just out of guilt because you bought them, but because your experience of interacting with them is really good. And you begin to realize that the quality of the rigging parts is not a luxury if you're doing long days. It's really a practical and essential decision, because hard parts built with poor tolerances and drifting clamps and stripped threads aren't just annoying, but they steal your time. Now, there's something that's a bit uncomfortable to talk about for me, but I will talk about it because it's useful. It's something that I've recognized myself over the last 12 months or so. When I first saw the Halo announced, the honest truth is that I had a moment of thinking it probably wasn't a piece of kit for me. And that wasn't because I had incorrectly assessed it. It was because it was clearly being positioned towards creators. And I've noticed something in myself. As I've started to get better clients and make more prestigious work, I have a tendency to feel like I occupy some kind of slightly elevated plane where I'm a filmmaker. And therefore, anything targeted towards creator culture is obviously so far beneath me. Which is completely absurd, for two reasons. One, the work I do, even at its best, still mostly ends up on phones, because that's where most moving image work is consumed now. And a good client doesn't magically turn your output into cinema, it turns it into effective content that serves a goal. And two, creators as a broad category are often wildly good at what they do, and they reach far more people than I likely ever will. Plus, they operate in a reality that is increasingly similar to modern commercial work, which is fast changes, multiple deliverables, lean crews, mixed environments, and consistent adaptation. So if a product is designed for that reality, it definitely isn't beneath the kind of professional work that I want to be aligned with. And the Halo, in practice, is a product that assumes you're going to change configurations, that assumes you will want to mount things in odd places, that assumes you will want rigging standards without building a full cinema rig. And the moment I kind of accepted that, my initial dismissal looked, frankly, pretty silly, because the only meaningful test is whether it helps you make better work, and it absolutely did. Most of us start with affordable rigging parts, and I think that's completely normal, and it's often the only option. I did the same, and I still have plenty of bits from Small Rig and Tilter and various other manufacturers, and some of them are completely fine. The issue is the cumulative effect of inconsistency, because when tolerances vary, or if clamps creep, when compatibility is only vaguely approximate, you end up spending much more attention than you should, constantly compensating. And the thing is, you might not even notice it until you use something that is properly engineered, and you realize how good that feels. On a boat or in bad weather or on a long day, that quality really matters because you're already managing enough variables and the rig should not just be another one. And every bit of kit I've been trying from Bright Tangerine is the absolute most insane quality. And it's why they have the reputation they have, because when you pick it up, it feels like it's designed by people who expect it to be used hard, repeatedly, by people who don't have time to baby it. One of the simplest tests in this house is whether Meg likes using something, because she often ends up filming me testing it, and if a rig is awkward, unbalanced, or annoying, she feels it instantly. And if it's comfortable and intuitive, she feels that too. She likes this setup very much. That matters because it means it's not just good in the hands of the person who built it, it's good in the hands of someone who just wants it to do what it's supposed to do, and who doesn't have time for anything else. If you've made it this far, you're clearly the kind of person who cares about detail, the practical bits and the bits that make a job run smoothly. So do me a favour, hit like and consider subscribing if you want more of these field-tested breakdowns, and leave a comment telling me the one rigging compromise you keep having to make and that you haven't been able to find a fix for. And then if you still can't get enough, if you want the in-between stuff, the day-to-day builds, the fishing campaign fragments, the quick tests that never make it to a full YouTube episodes, follow me on Instagram where I'm Jack Filmed. Normally when you're testing a bit of kit, there's clearly an intended audience for it. However, I kind of feel like anyone would benefit from the Halo. If you run a bare camera forever and you never need to add accessories and you never feel the lack of mounting points, maybe that's not you. Maybe you're a photographer, not a video maker. Also, maybe if you're the kind of person that never is going to upgrade your camera and you've got a camera specific cage that you love, yeah, maybe perhaps you don't need this. But if your work involves changing configurations, swapping bodies, mounting accessories cleanly, operating handheld for long day stretches, working in awkward, unpredictable environments, or simply wanting your camera to feel like a tool rather than a delicate rectangle, then this Halo from Bright Tangerine is the most compelling product I have encountered because it solves real problems and it solves them in a very straightforward way. And the reason I wanted to make this episode is not just that the Halo is a good bit of kit, it's that it reminded me that the story you tell yourself about your identity can make you reject useful tools. And that is a silly mistake to make when your job is to solve problems. A tool either helps you make better work or it doesn't. It either reduces friction or it doesn't. And it either makes the day run calmer and more smoothly or it doesn't. For me, the Halo reduced friction. It made small cameras easier to rig and much more pleasant to operate, and it gave me options in unpredictable environments. It makes the whole system feel more deliberate. So I'm very glad I have had the chance to use it, and I'm embarrassed to confess that my first reaction was coloured by category assumptions rather than function, because the more you do this, the more you realise that the best kit is often the kit that simply works, and the best decisions are often the ones that are made on the basis of reality, not status. One more time, Bright Tangerine loaned me this kit for a project, and for that I'm really grateful. It arrived in that awkward stretch between Christmas and New Year with bank holidays in the mix, which is not easy logistically, and the support from the team has been genuinely excellent. And being able to speak to people who understand rigging in practical terms makes a huge difference when you're trying to build something fit for a specific purpose. I'll do a separate episode on the shoulder rig components, because that more than deserves its own proper breakdown. This one was about the surprise. I'm Saint Jack. Whatever this is, I'm calling Western approaches. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.